Hello, thank you for joining me. It's a cold April evening. Once again, I haven't scripted anything for this one. I'm working on something. I just haven't done it yet on that front. But in the meantime, this will be another of those catch-up ones. So pick the price off. Um, so yeah, I've had, I suppose, a fairly decent haul the last couple of weeks. This was yesterday. This is actually one of those. I think we can consider him a serious author. He's a proper author and not some kind of pulp guy. But I've read one other by I hope I'm going to pronounce this right. Shusaku Endo. The reason I picked this up was I've read one other by him, which is called When I Whistle, and that book, it's a historical jump backwards and forwards in time from the perspective of this character post-war, thinking back to his school days in the early days of the Second World War, when he's just approaching the sort of age where he's going to have to think about cadets and then enlisting. Not a terribly nice project for a young Japanese man at that point in time. Now, that book featured, I think, it's both funny and quite touching. The characterisation of the guy's school friend is a very memorable character who's known in the book. He's known as Flatfish because of his features, and he's this character the guy meets at school who at first he thinks the guy is an absolute idiot, but then he realises he's actually really clever, but kind of projects this persona of being a bit dense in order to sort of get away with things. And it's just this great characterisation. So when I chanced across another of his works yesterday, I thought, why not? I'm sort of running out of space for big, bulky hardbacks, but I couldn't really turn it down. Anyway, excuse me. Second, now, Ramsey Campbell, I've kind of been meaning. I know I read something in the 90s by him. I'm aware of him by reputation. He's quite well thought of as an author, and he was, I believe, the editor on the New Tales of the Cthulhu Mythos that I reviewed a couple of years ago. He had one story in that which also crosses over in this. I've got a little way into this, a couple of stories in. In the intro, he kind of goes. The intro involves a bit of, I suppose, pained self-examination about his debt to H.P. Lovecraft in his earlier writing, and the early stories that I've read in this so far are very in debt to Lovecraft, and all right, we're all fanboys of something. I'm not such a huge fan of Lovecraft as I am other writers who are inspired by him, I suppose. If you've seen that video I did about New Tales, I'll go into that a bit more there. But this has the look, I think this is late 80s or early 90s. This, I suppose has that look. They'd stop putting foil stamping on novels by that point, but it has that classic, that's a bit sort of Garth would be proud of that fucking hell beast there, wouldn't he? I don't know where this one's going to pop up in the stories, but that's a tasty bit of airbrush illustration of the period right there. Somewhere between one of those pre-dinosaur type, when fish learned to crawl out of the water and start breathing and laying it. Well, no, they went back to water to lay their eggs anyway. Amphibians, right? A cross between a prehistoric amphibian and some fucking something that would crawl out of the slime at Innsmouth or somewhere, I don't know. Anyway, I'll persist with this and see how we get on. Next, now I have part one. I've been meaning to actually do something on part one. These, yeah, this probably isn't the time or place to really get into too much detail on these. They're kind of, I suppose, hippie period, that counterculture sort of environment that these came from. It's kind of bizarre conspiracy theory stroke satire, I suppose you could call them. Anyway, that's Leviathan. According to the first book, Leviathan is somehow a single-celled animal, although it looks like this kind of what they call a megalodon. It's fucking like a goldfish that's grown to the size of, or I don't know, a clownfish that's kind of the size of an oil tanker or something. Anyway, there's the again, nice tasty bit of airbrush style art there, but I can't remember. I know I read another one in the series. I can't remember if it was this or the second one. Now, I've read 2 out of the 3 of this series. I think I'll get into more detail about these another time. Next, now it's a long time since I've seen the film. This stuff is dark. And I can't quite say it's local interest, but it's within travelling distance, I suppose, of me. Not that I'm particularly one of those people that will rubberneck an old crime scene. I'm aware of where it is. I'm sometimes around that way, but I haven't yet. I don't think there's much left to look at. I think they knocked the place down and he'll bulldoze over it or something. But I don't think I've ever read this book before, but the film I've seen a couple of times. It is one of those definitive post-war British crime cases, and all sorts of moral implications tied in with it. I'm not expecting this to be an easy ride, but I think this is quite an early edition, incidentally. It's 1961. Hang on. This first published 1961. This is a 1963 edition. So this, I believe this came out. I haven't double checked this actually, so I'm kind of flying without an autopilot, without a safety net here. But I believe the death penalty was still there at the time of this one being published. So a lot to get into there. Again, this isn't the time and place to go into that detail, but interesting find anyway. Next, now this looks quite promising. Someone went to a bit of trouble there with the cover art. It's, sort of looks like burning kind of some sort of voodoo ceremonial thing is going on there. Robert Curryford's Hex, Death is Only the Beginning. Now this looks like it's going to be some kind of Dahomey style, to pinch a quote from Dr. Sanchez of Garth Marenghi's Dark Place. It's all voodoo nonsense as far as this cat's concerned. I've not been able to find out much about this, other than it appears to have been originally published by the publishing arm of Playboy. Believe it or not, I've got records on a Playboy label. Actually, I've got a couple of singles, which are these kind of funk records. So Playboy must have, I'm not intimate with the history of Playboy particularly, but it seems to have branched out, into record releases as well as book publishing. So, I mean, I don't know if that's any sort of sign of quality that this originated on the Playboy imprint. This one's Sphere Books, as so many of my back books are. Not exclusively, but this looks like it does have potential. Fear is waiting just around the corner. Hex, a doll with long hair, a beard and tattered clothing has arrived for Duff Reeson. 12 long silver needles are thrust deep into the doll's heart, and with hours, a primitive evil has claimed its first victim. So there we go, voodoo nonsense. But yeah, nice find. And lastly, I don't know if this happens to other people. This happened to me. Tell me if this happens to you. Just idly, I don't know what reminded me, but something got me thinking of a book that I've not seen a copy of since I saw it. I read it. I got one out of the library when I was probably 10 years old. And it had this story in it that, it was an anthology, I think aimed at that sort of kiddie or young adult market. This anthology that one story in it was the story of this kind of it's this kind of entity that seems to have just formed from the kind of slime and mould and loam. Is that a thing? It's a long time since geography lessons. I think loam could be a word. And all the sort of gunk that you'd get on the floor of a forest, or sort of swampy sort of area, and it's kind of formed itself around the skeleton of someone who went missing a long time ago. But it's not, if I'm understanding it right, it's not the kind of reincarnation or spiritual activation of the owner of the skeleton. It's this kind of just mud beast thing that just wanders around the forest stalking people and killing them, apparently out of curiosity. But so anyway, something reminded me of what the hell was that story? What was that book that was in? And then just weirdly, within a couple of weeks, I just quite randomly stumble across a copy of that very volume, which is so bizarre. So this is WLE Short Story 6 Horror Stories, chosen by Brian Newton. I don't know anything about Brian Newton, but so this includes that story was Theodore Sturgeon's It. Not to be confused with Coco the Clown, possibly Pennywise the Clown. It's Stephen King's. Not to be confused with Stephen King's It. Anyway, there's another story which I'd kind of forgot, but it comes back to me now. Arthur Porges. I don't know how to pronounce it. Arthur Porges. You tell me. The Ruum. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right either. But this is a story. It's about when before life has properly formed on Earth, there's other civilizations seem to be involved in this big space battle, and a passing cruiser has kind of let loose this kind of, I suppose it's this kind of automated probe. No, well, it seems to sort of think for itself. It's some sort of this probe thing is released. This is the Ruum, and it lands on on a young planet Earth. And is left there. It's kind of self-sustaining, self-activating. In the meantime, its owners are destroyed in this fucking great intergalactic dust-up, so it's just forgotten and never retrieved. So eons later, someone who's doing the sort of trek of I think it's in Canada, someone who's doing their kind of wilderness, I think they're involved in prospecting, oil or minerals, and they're kind of, they sort of landed in the wilds for a couple of days, and they encounter this thing. It's this kind of, it's somewhere between a Terminator. It's this, just relentless, merciless mechanical bastard. So it's like a Terminator, or maybe, between that and that. I don't know if you ever watched Black Mirror, and there's that episode called Metalhead, and it's this sort of a robot security dog thing that once it sniffs you, it's just, it never gives up. And the Ruum is kind of that, except its mission is it's like some biological research thing. It's equipped with this fang, or this, like this syringe that will inject its victim with, I suppose it's like this suspended animation type of poison that will just kind of smack you down so you're kind of alive and there's some level of consciousness, but you can't move or really function, and you stay like that for, well, this thing, there are stegosauruses and things like that kind of sort of moping around in this thing's area. So it's that, and so it's one of those like Terminator style, relentless, merciless technology tracking a guy, and just how soon before he tires, and just the inevitable happens. So that one I'd forgotten about, but it came back to me quite powerfully. When you're that age, you just soak these things up. But it's just really weird that I hadn't thought about this in years, decades, and the moment, within weeks of me thinking about it, suddenly up pops a copy. I don't know if that on the front cover, I think when I was 10, I sort of took that to represent the thing in the It story. I don't know if it does. It looks like this kind of slightly misconceived bit of modern art, really. But anyway, strange that this should cross my path again. Does anyone else ever have that happen? Anyway, thank you for joining me. Hopefully see you soon.